We are live on the Chef Girl Nutrition Facebook page for another live Tuesday cooking demo. So I'm here every Tuesday, same time and place, with a live demo for you to help inspire you with some new ways to use seasonal ingredients, and also just to help give you some more confidence in the kitchen with some basic cooking skills that can make healthy cooking a little bit more fun and give you some more variety. So today's demo, so we're in fall now, which is finally starting to feel like fall outside here, which is actually very lovely. So we're using seasonal ingredients in our demos, and so our seasonal ingredient today is beets. So, okay, well, so first off, you might not always see beets like this with the leaves and everything attached. So you can find beets either loose, where you have just the beets with none of this stuff attached, or you'll find them in a bunch like this. So usually if you're buying them from a local market or something, you'll find them fully intact like this. Even in the regular grocery store too, but in the regular store you might also just find them loose. So we handle them the same way. Of course, when they come with the leaves and everything on them, we're just going to remove that. The nice thing about buying them with the leaves is that you can eat them. So the beet greens are just as edible as the beets themselves. So you can use them just like any dark leafy green, which we talked about a lot in our summer cooking series, and some different ways to use those. So the beet greens themselves, just like the beets, are full of nutrients, full of really good for you nutrients, and you can use them like just as you would any other leafy green. So sauteing them, you can use them in a pesto, you can, put them in a frittata, toss them into pastas. However you use greens, you can use beet greens. The only thing is that you do want to make sure that they look good, that they're not like super wilty, like you can see in this bunch. Like this one is kind of icky looking, so I'll remove that one. But so if you are buying them fully intact like this and you want to use the greens, I would just check them out and make sure that the greens look nice and fresh and vibrant and they're not super wilty. And this goes for other vegetables too, like radish greens you can eat. Most greens on vegetables are edible. So just something to keep in mind. So it's a good extra benefit of buying the whole beets like this, and then you can use those greens for something else. So for today's demo, we are talking all about how to handle the beets from raw. They are a root vegetable, so they're in the same family as our other root veggies like potatoes, parsnips, turnips, carrots, all of these kinds of things that grow in the ground, right? So they grow root in the ground and we pull them out of the ground. So what this means is root vegetables especially are very rich in nutrients because they also pick up nutrients that are in the soil that they're growing in. So we get a lot of nutrient benefit from beets, and also that beets have a very deep, vibrant, almost purple color, the red beets, right? They're almost more purpley than red. They're a very deep color, so that also means very deep nutrients. And to just get that, I have 2 beets in the oven cooking because in order to show you the whole demo, I had to get a head start on them because the beets take like an hour to roast. So I'm pulling a little like Food Network situation here. So let me just check on these, see if they're done. Not quite. Okay, those aren't quite done yet. So, so we were talking nutrient benefits in the beets. So yeah, so that deep color also means more nutrients. They have some really good anti-inflammatory properties. good for heart health and particularly for blood pressure control. So there's a lot of reasons to love beets, but because they grow in the ground, a lot of people say that they taste like the ground, that they taste like dirt, or they taste very earthy. And they do have a very earthy flavor to them, but they're also really sweet. The beets have a lot of natural sugars in them. And depending on the way that you cook them, the more that those natural sugars will come out, and that the beets will taste sweeter and not so bitter and earthy. So that's why roasting is my preferred cooking method here. So we talked a bit about roasting when we worked with our butternut squash, and we talked about how roasting compared to something like boiling or steaming really helps to bring out the natural sugars in veggies, because they get to caramelize a bit more. We get a bit more texture and a bit more caramelization of the natural sugars that are in the veggies. So it's a preferred way to get more of the sweetness out of them. So there's a few different ways that you can roast beets. So we're going to talk about those different methods. But first, let's just see how we first handle these beets that come fully equipped with the leaves and stems. So very simply, we're just going to chop off that stem. Just work with one at a time here. But we want to leave a little bit of the stem here intact, because that helps for the juices to stay in the beet. If we cut the stem off too much, right, if we cut like here, that can let the juices leach out of the beets. And we want to keep those juices in there for flavor and for nutrients, right? The nutrients live inside the beet as well. So we want to cut just like right here, just to leave the stem a little bit intact. We have the root that's still intact, and we're going to roast them whole just like this. But like I said, we'll talk about a few different ways to do it. But so this, if you get them with the leaves on and you're going to roast them whole, you want to leave the stem intact a little bit. Okay, and then like I said, I'm going to use these greens. So I'm going to just set them aside. I'm going to wash them, and I will let you know how I use them. Okay, so let's grab the other guy. So again, want to just leave a little bit of that stem intact. Okay, so that's it. That's it for preparing the beets in terms of having to chop them up. So now we have beets like this, and actually, as I'm staring at them, I don't know if you guys have heard, a lot of time you'll hear that they say that food, especially fruits and veggies, look like the organs that they are very beneficial for, which really like poses to be quite true. If you haven't looked at this, you should look it up and just search, produce that looks like, the organs that it's good for. But don't beets look like hearts? And they're good for heart health. So just something, as I'm looking at them, I'm like, wow, these really look like hearts. Okay. So the next thing we need to do is just scrub them clean. So if you have like a vegetable scrubber, you can use that. I'm just scrubbing them with my hands, and then I just wipe them down with a paper towel. And the texture on the paper towel helps to kind of scrub any of that extra dirt away. But you do want to give them a good scrub because they are root vegetables, so they tend to be more dirty. Similarly to potatoes, right? That we just scrub potatoes and sweet potatoes down pretty well to get all that dirt off. Okay, so I just give them like really like a good clean. Okay, so there's a few ways that we can roast these. So let's talk about those different methods. So, all right, this one was a little more dirty. Okay, so that's it. So we just have now our beets are ready to go. So I say they're ready to go because I'm going to roast them whole. So the way we do this, we can just roast them whole. We wrap them up in aluminum foil, and we then stick those aluminum foil packets into the oven, either directly onto the oven rack, or you can put them on a baking sheet and then put the baking sheet in the oven. Another way that you can do this is with a baking dish, like a 9-inch by 13-inch casserole dish, some sort of, doesn't even have to be that big, but some sort of like baking casserole dish. Drizzle some olive oil on the bottom of the dish, put the beets in as they are, whole, and then you would cover the dish either with its own cover or with aluminum foil and put that in the oven. The other way, and this would be the way that I would suggest you do it if you were going to eat the beets on their own, just like roasted beets, like as a side dish, or if you're going to just add them into something and you want them to already, be more flavorful, maybe be seasoned with some salt and pepper, would be to peel the beets raw. So peel them now with a vegetable peeler and chop them up just as we would any other vegetable that we're roasting, just like we did with the butternut squash, where we peel it raw, we chop it up into, bite-sized pieces and drizzle that with olive oil, salt and pepper, put on a baking sheet and put that in the oven. So the reason I say that's a good method if you're going to just eat the beets as is because that's how you're going to get the most caramelization, the most flavor and texture on the beets on their own, right? Because when they're roasting like that, that's what we talked about with the butternut squash too, as they're roasting like that, the natural sugars get to develop more and you get more of that brownness on the outside, more of a texture, and more sweetness. So that's how you'll get like the most flavorful and sweetest beets, is to do it that way. This way is super easy, right? Because we don't have to, that's all we had to just wash them, and we're gonna just put them in the oven whole. And then what happens is now you have beets that are cooked, and then you can add them into wherever you're going to use them. And we're gonna talk about some ways that we can use them once they're cooked. But in doing it this way, they're not seasoned or anything. They're just cooked, roasted beets that you can use in a variety of different ways. And it's just a super simple preparation right into the oven. They do take, like on the lower side, like 45 minutes is like the minimum time that they take to cook whole, and the time will vary based on how big your beets are. But like the ones I have in the oven now are about the same size as these guys, and they've been in the oven now they're going on an hour now. So it usually takes, I find, at least an hour, and sometimes even more. So it depends on the size of the beets. If you have like an Instant Pot or a different pressure cooker, you can pressure cook beets, and it cuts the time in half, if that's something that you're, that you don't want to deal with the time. Also, like I meant, like the method that I was just saying, where we would peel and cut them up and put them in the oven, once they're cut up into smaller pieces like that, they also will cook faster. So that's another reason to do it that way if you're a little bit short on time. Okay, so let me I'm gonna just pull these guys out of the oven, and then we'll put these guys in the oven. Okay, so to check them, actually I can just show you here. I'll show you what I'm doing with the ones that are cooked. So it's just 2 beets that I wrapped in aluminum foil and put them on a baking sheet, and I'm checking them with a skewer. You can do this with a fork too. You just want them to be fork tender. So you want this to stick into it without resistance. So you don't want them to be mushy, but you don't want to feel like you're having to shove this into it. You want it to be nice and tender. So that's what I'm checking for here. They're almost there, but I'm gonna give them like another 5 minutes. Okay. All right, right, so let's prep these and then I will pull those guys out. Okay. So another tip that I'll say too is you do want to try to buy ones that are around the same size so that they cook at an even time, because the time can vary so much depending on how big they are. Look for, if you're buying them loose, of course, look for ones that are of similar size. And if you're buying them in a bunch, look for ones that they're similar size on the bunch, because even within the bunch, they can vary. So that's just, okay, so you can either put these in the aluminum foil packet together or separate, like I just showed you there. If they're really big, then I recommend keeping them separate. But these guys aren't too big, so I can just put them in together. Okay. So, oh, can't even see what I'm doing. Okay. So I just lay them down here. And we just wrap them up. Just like that, nice little packet of beets. And then, like I said, you can just put this right into the oven like this, or you can put it on a baking sheet. The baking sheet just makes it easier to, you know, pull them in and out of the oven. And in case any liquid does drip out, then it will drip out onto the baking sheet and not out into your oven. But that's one of the reasons, right, why we keep it with the stem still intact versus cutting it off so that the juices can stay inside the beet. Okay. All right. So these are going in the oven just like this. And you can pull the other ones. Okay. So I like to start them at 30 minutes. Check it after 30 minutes. They're not going to be done, but 30 minutes is a good start. And then you want to check them about every 10 minutes or so after the 30 minutes. Because like I said, you don't want them to get overcooked. You don't want them to become mushy. You want to get them right at that tender spot. So check them every 10 minutes or so, just like I did. You can even stick the toothpick or a fork right through the aluminum foil, so you don't even have to open up the packet. And you can kind of rotate them too a little bit as they're cooking. So every time you check on them, just give them a little rotate so that different sides, just that they're getting evenly cooked all around. So I actually did a little test here. I don't remember which one is which, but in one of these beets, I drizzled olive oil over the beet and I rubbed olive oil around it to see if it makes the skin come off any easier versus just leaving it plain. Okay. So I'm gonna just unwrap these. Okay. So I'm just unwrapping them. So I think this is the one. Yeah, so this is the one that had the olive oil. And this one had no olive oil. Okay, so you actually can, I want you to just see them close. You actually can see a difference. You see, this is the one with the olive oil, and it has like that sheen on it. So it does look like the skin is going to be a little bit easier to peel off of the one with the olive oil. But you definitely can get the skin off without using the olive oil as well. So the thing with beets, of course, is they get very messy. So I definitely recommend wearing an apron. If you don't want any beet juice on your hands, you can wear gloves. If you don't want to deal with the mess, you can wear gloves to do this. I've heard that putting lemon juice on your hands helps if you get any beet juice on. If you rub lemon juice on them and then wash them, it helps the beet juice come off. If you have a countertop or a cutting board that stains easily and you don't want it to get stained, you can lay something down Even just lay tape some parchment paper down over your working area so that you don't get beet juice everywhere. The thing about roasting them whole like this is that the peel does come off much easier. So the peel really should actually come off just by rubbing them with paper towel. What you can also do is run them under cold water and peel with your hands. Running them under water will, you'll lose a little bit more of the juice in it, but it comes off pretty fast. You're not like holding them underwater for a long time. It's just really quick. It helps to run away the juice too, so it doesn't really stick to your hands, and then the mess is contained in your sink versus doing it on the counter. And also, if you do need a little bit of assistance, if it's not coming off really easily, you can of course use a vegetable peeler or like a paring knife, just a small paring knife to help ease it along a little bit. I was just gonna say something else, but okay. So that's it. So you just want to be cautious when that's what I was gonna say. If you're having a really hard time getting the peel off, it might be because your beets need to cook a little bit longer. So that's just, if they're not quite tender enough, the skin, you might have a harder time getting the skin off, and that can be a good sign that they need a few more minutes in the oven. So you want to let them cool to a point that you're able to handle them. So if like now, because I'm going to do it now and they're still hot, I'll do it I'll use the paper towel and it should be okay. But like I said, you can also run them under cold water also to help cool them down a little bit so that you can handle them. Within these foil packets, you can add other things into the foil packets to add more flavor to the beets too. So you can put like garlic cloves in here, and then you end up with roasted garlic and roasted beets. And nothing is better than roasted garlic in my opinion. So you can put some garlic cloves in here. You can put some fresh herbs, especially as we're getting into the cooler months. Some herbs like fresh thyme and fresh rosemary tend to go well with fall and winter dishes. They're like very Thanksgiving-ish type of herbs that we see. So you could put a few sprigs of fresh thyme and fresh rosemary in the packets, and that will just help to infuse some flavor into these beets. So there's a lot that you can do here, but like I said, doing it this way just gives you plain cooked beets that you can use in a variety of ways. So once we have them peeled, I recommend, if you're not using them right away, I recommend storing them whole. So peel them and then store them whole, and they'll retain, the integrity a little bit better versus cutting them up and then putting them in the fridge. So peel them, store them whole, and then as you need them, whatever you're using them for, you can cut them up, puree it, whatever it is. So just doing something like this is a good meal prep thing. So if you like to meal prep on Sundays, let's say, doing something like this and cooking up a big batch of beets, just doesn't sound very exciting, does it? But if you want to cook up a big batch of beets to have for the week, this is just a simple technique to just very little prep, put them in the oven, and then you have beets that you can add into a variety of things. So if you saw today, I posted a little graphic of some different ideas for how to use the beets that isn't just eating them as is, right? We talk about this all the time, transforming our produce and transforming our veggies into something a little bit different, a little bit more creative. So especially if you are someone who thinks that you don't like beets, you think they taste like dirt, you've never found a way that you enjoy them, there's a lot of different ways that you can use them and still get all of the nutrient benefits from the beets, even if you don't like to eat just pieces of beet. So once we have them cooked like this, you can puree it, and you can use the beet puree to make soup. So you can make a beet-based soup. You can make hummus out of the cooked beets. You can puree some beet with other hummus ingredients. It's really just like a regular hummus recipe, and you're adding beet in there, so you're adding in the nutrients from the beets a little bit of sweetness from the beets, and it will come out like a bright pink color, which is always fun. And you can make beet hummus and serve it, and then ask your guests what they think the secret ingredient is. Why do they think it's pink? I once had gnocchi at this really great Italian restaurant that had beets in the gnocchi. So that's also a common way that you'll see beets used maybe in restaurants. We're not all always making homemade pasta at home, but if you do enjoy making homemade pasta, you can also use beet puree in homemade pasta. So I had this gnocchi that had pureed beets in the potato mixture to make the gnocchi. So they were pink. So it was really cool to, so you can play a little trick on people and ask them what they think the secret ingredient is that turned your hummus pink. You can use the cooked beets and puree them and add them into baked goods. So beets work really well, especially with chocolate. So you can make like chocolate beet muffins, chocolate beet bread, like a loaf, chocolate beet cake, a lot of different ways that you can use that. And it's similar to if you've used like applesauce in a recipe or even using canned pumpkin. So it's just another vegetable puree that you can use it really just helps to add some moisture to the baked good. You really don't taste them, it just makes them really moist. So that's a really interesting and fun way to use them too. And then of course we can use cooked beets in salads. I love to add them to grain salad, so like a farro based grain salad. The beets hold up really well in something like that. And you can also add them to smoothies. That was also on that list. So you can add beets into a smoothie. And similar, like smoothies are just like this magic trick where you add vegetables in and somehow you just don't taste the vegetables. So beets are kind of like that. If you add beets into a smoothie, you really don't taste the beet. But again, you get all of that nutrient benefit from having them in a smoothie. So there's a lot of fun, creative ways that you can use them. So don't feel like, if you don't just like eating a piece of beet, don't feel like you just hate beets and you can't find a way that you enjoy them. I'm not saying to force yourself to eat beets, but I just want to show you that there are different ways that we can get a little creative to include some foods into our diets that we may have earlier shunned out of our life because we had a bad experience. Okay, so I think our beets should be cool enough now for me to handle. So let's go ahead. So we're going to do the paper towel trick first. And we're going to see how we do. Okay. And of course you could also do this. You could try to also do this with a dish towel. Again, the texture on it will help to wipe away that peel, but it will totally stain your towel. So make sure that it's a towel that, you reserve only for peeling beets, or that you just don't care that it gets a little bit stained. Okay, so I'm gonna pick up a little beet guy here, and just gonna rub the peel away. Okay, so you can see that's the peel, and it really does come right off as you rub it off. And you can eat beet peel. Let me just, you can't see me. Okay. You can eat the peel of the beets, so you don't have to, it's not inedible, and especially because we just cooked it. So you don't have to feel like you have to get it perfectly all off because it is edible. So, it certainly does not have to be perfect. But yeah, so you can see how easily it's coming off. Okay, and this kind of protects you from the mess. I'm trying to do it over the aluminum foil here, so we're not getting beet juice everywhere. And like I said, by keeping the root and the stem intact, that's also helping to keep any juices in. So we're not, so it's not like dripping all over me as I'm peeling it. Okay. So you can actually just keep it, keep it fully intact like this with, and in rubbing the peel off, the stem came off, but it's still intact at the very top, and our root is still intact at the bottom. So that's helping to just keep the beet in place. And so I think we're pretty good here. I think I got it all. Okay, so that's it now. It's nice and peeled. And so we can just let it cool before you put it in the fridge, let it cool completely. And store it like this. So store it whole. It'll keep fresher for longer stored like this, and then take it out and cut it up and use it as needed. Okay. So there's the beet hands. Not as bad as it could be, just because I'm holding the beet up in the air. Okay, so let's try our other one. So that was the one that I put olive oil on the beet. So this is the one that I didn't put olive oil on. And it's also peeling quite nicely. So I don't think it makes too much of a difference. You can see if you rub olive oil on the beet or not. It doesn't really impart that much more flavor into the beet itself, because we're not even eating the peel. So it might help if you want to drizzle some olive oil on it. It's just one extra little step, but you don't have to. The peel is coming off of this beet just as easily, really. So that's it for our roasted beets. So just like I made the recipes of summer ebook, there will be a recipes of fall ebook. And so you can look out for a couple of these beet-based recipes that will be in the fall ebook. I'd love to hear from you what you'd like to see. So maybe like a beet hummus or a beet green pesto. Do you want to see a baked good with beets? So I'll definitely add a couple of these beet recipes in there. And that is it for our beet demo. So I really hope this was helpful. I'll mention again, like I was talking about roasting, you certainly can boil or steam beets as well to cook them. And the same thing, like just whole, just prep them the same way that we did, scrub them clean, and then you can boil or steam them whole. And same thing, the peel will come off much easier once they're cooked. And that's it. So like I said, I just prefer roasting because of the flavor. I do think that it gives it the sweetest flavor. And so like I said, if you want to eat the beets just on their own, I recommend the cutting them before roasting method, so that they get nice and caramelized and even sweeter. All right, my friends, thank you for joining me, and I will see you next week.